But the Shadowhawk certainly will. 55-ton jump jetting mech. Might be able to contest the top spot for mediums from the Centurion. You were talking about Canyon earlier and how difficult it is for like the Ally and the other mechs with no jump jets to get around. That's having jump jets on a 55-ton mech is going to solve a lot of problems. I think it's going to be good.
I'd agree with that. I think the Thunderbolt may just add another jump-capable weight. That would be only viable or only used probably in weight-restricted matches where what is it, 60 tons or is it 65?
65.
65 just happens to fit your weight restriction, and you need another jump-capable mech that can mount torso-mounted PPCs and isn't a catapult.
The Thunderbolt seems pretty broad in the torso.
How do you guys think the off-center cockpit will have? Do you think it'll have much of an effect? Right now, the only mech with even close to an off-center cockpit is the Atlas, and I don't notice that much piloting.
Shouldn't be bad. Your weapons will still go where the circle is, right?
Yeah, I don't think it'll be a huge effect, but I guess it could depend on the person. Something to get used to.
It'll be cool.
How fast? The Shadowhawk's going to be... It's pretty fast, isn't it? It's got a 360
Mounts
XL,
a big
right?
engine.
Yeah.
Max is 360 XL. Or 360.
Do you guys think there's going to be any imbalance with the fact that they're releasing the Shadowhawk, the Thunderbolt, and the Battlemaster essentially 3 months before everyone else to the people who bought the Phoenix package? So people who have the Overlord are going to have the Battlemaster way before anybody else.
Won't they probably be kept out of competitive play until everyone can get them?
Yeah, that's something we've been batting.
I was going to ask.
Run hot or die. We haven't had a final ruling on whether we're going to allow it. I personally lean towards don't allow it in until they're actually released for everyone.
I was wondering about that because it would create. I mean, if you have poor is a bad word to use, but if you have a unit that doesn't have a lot of, you have a lot of college students, people who don't have money or something like that. You don't have people that bought the Overlord package. You would suddenly be at a huge disadvantage if they were allowed. Panic, do you know if Merrick has debated that at all? Yeah, get those big eyes. Think hard.
No, I have no idea because I just drop shit and kill things. You'd have to ask Queenblade or Antonius or one of the other judges. But I'm assuming similar restrictions will be placed on them. It doesn't make sense to let just a small percentage of people use them in drops, even though that the same thing was done with the Protectors. I know that several of those were used or utilized during that turn, but I think that this is far more significant of a release. Although not really, as to quote Jaeger a minute ago, none of the other ones except for the Shadowhawk will really be affecting the mechs brought into matches more than I guess the Orion did, or more than, or they won't really be affecting the drop decks. So I would assume that even if they were allowed, you would see a minimum number of them.
I think the problem though is you don't know if there are going to be issues with the mechs as they're rolled out, right? So the Centurion was the #1 mech because it was basically the most invulnerable medium that you could have, and we realized there's some issues with the hit boxes, right, for doing damage to a Centurion. We don't know if some of these are going to have those kinds of advantages that you can, if you have those mechs and no one else has them, you can take advantage of that in competitive drops and throw the balance off. Just don't know.
True. Fair point.
So you guys think that the Battlemaster won't add anything new, the ability to run basically a zombie assault mech, except for, well, obviously doesn't have any weapons in the CT, but that not being reliant on the arms.
You could put some zombie stuff on an Atlas D or something like that, and you still get focused down too hard in the game to utilize that. I don't know. The zombie mediums are much more effective because those, again, as Xander pointed out a minute ago, the hitboxes, I think they still have some sort of a problem. They're still just advantageous hitboxes, whereas the Atlas has massive torsos and massive everything, and I'm assuming the Battlemaster will be about the same way. So instead of ending up with a very effective zombie, you're going to end up with sort of a half effective zombie, where you're just going to get killed anyway or stripped.
Yeah, anything you would be zombieing with all the energy slots on its torso anyways, the Stalker can just do better. That thing can just slightly turn right or left and shield away the damage.
It seems like unless the frame is really really small or some giant change, it seems like the Battlemaster won't necessarily add anything super new. Just a lot of energy slots.
Well, speaking of the Stalker, they haven't really done a very unusual mech design pretty much since the Stalker was released. All the rest of them have been pretty much humanoid, torso mount, arm mount, like low mounted. And so that leaves the Stalker as still the king of just hill peaking. So I'm looking forward to when they can start introducing more esoteric designs like the Stalker into the game.
And do you think that that's a limitation on design, or do you think that's a limitation on just like free time? They're just making more humanoid mechs because they've been doing a ton of it lately.
I'm not sure if it's a issue with the amount of like source mechs that they can pick. I'm not actually the biggest BattleTech buff, and knowing
That's
everything
fine.
back there, I'm hugely enthusiastic for it, just not all of the knowledge. So I wouldn't be able to say if it's a conscious decision that they don't want to introduce more of these asymmetric, situationally very useful mechs after they've seen what the Stalker is capable of, or if they just don't have the source material to draw from. So if anybody else wants to chime in, that'd be great.
I know we've seen like the concept sketches for the King Crab, but every time that pops up, everybody says something like, dual AC-20 assault mech, 2 OP, stuff like that.
Yeah, they've been very careful about not shaking up and introducing anything too crazy like that. Nothing dual Gauss capable above.
Dual Gloss, dual AC-20 assault mech would be pretty brutal.
Yeah, we don't see any annihilators on the fields.
For good reason.
Not yet, at least, anyways.
Oh no.
Until they get
No.
more of the weapon systems and other stuff to throw the balance of the game off.
Give me my UAC 20. That's all I want.
Yeah, honestly, they've released like every Intersphere mech I know about or knew about, and more than that after the fact. So I'm not sure. I'm just I'm looking forward to UI 2.0 and community warfare at this point.
And
More
so
later.
the last kind of the last kind of change I have on my little spreadsheet here is the seismic change, which is coming in like November or something. No, not November. Is it November 4th? I don't remember.
I think so.
The seismic
I think
change,
it's
which
like
is
December 17th.
seismic will no longer sense while you are moving, and certain caliber ballistics will set off your seismic center. That's pretty fucking big. Like that
Troll
changes...
team of Jaeger mechs running AC-5s running through the caves on Forest Colony shooting the ground.
So what do you guys
So
think?
just-
What do you guys think about that change? It's a pretty big change to something that's fairly integral to competitive play.
You
I
could
think-
just run a Jaeger through the caves with a couple AC-2s, create a lot of noise, and do something different.
No. That was a joke.
I think you're definitely going to see a reduction in the number of seismic that people are carrying on their mechs, right? So, personally, the way I look at it, maybe it might be useful for somebody who's going to be standing still, somewhat at the back, sniping, because as you're paying attention to what's downrange, maybe you'll catch something coming up on you from the back. But it's, almost all of our mechs, or a lot of our mechs carry it now, and we're definitely going to eliminate it, I would think, with those kind of restrictions, the changes to it. I don't see it being that valuable.
Yeah, it's going from a everything should have it to a situationally useful tool, and something that you're using it to customize your mech. And I think that's a good change and a overdue change.
And with that, I believe, is the update to UAV gain. You now gain more C-bills if you have a UAV up and mechs are targeted from your UAV. So do you think it'll completely shift? Do you think everyone will be running a UAV now and no one will be running a seismic center, sir? Or do you think you'll still see a little bit of both?
Yeah, I'd certainly say that we'll probably start seeing at least one on every team, whereas now a lot of teams don't run the UAV at all because they can just rely on either seismic or their light scouting good enough, and without needing seismic, because lights are constantly moving, there's very few instances where the light's just going to be standing still, unless, like you were talking about Forest Colony earlier, just have one light hang out by the cave to make sure nothing's happening in there. So it will open things up for the lights to take other things besides seismic sensor. It's like, especially the Jenner F, which is still very prevalent now, only has 2 module slots at mastery level.
Yeah, I've actually started using. I just mastered the Jenner K finally, just for the fact that it has 4 module slots. I think even with the change, I'll probably still take the seismic just to watch stuff like caves on certain maps that have them. And UAVs are extremely important, in my opinion, in competitive play.
The other aspect of it is that it is actually a buff to light mech play, because
buff.
before you couldn't really sneak up on things, or you had to be very, very careful sneaking up on things. And also, if you were involved in a light dogfight and you were trying to run away, and they were right on your tail, it didn't matter how many buildings you weaved through, they knew exactly where you were. Whereas it used to be that, say, on River City, you could be juking, diving from one alley to the next, and you go left, they guess wrong, and they go right, and you've successfully broken contact. So that having that sort of gameplay back will be nice.
Do you think it'll bring about a lot more defensive play? Do you think people will try and use the seismic to their advantage by holding still and trying to get those blips? Or do you think it will just reduce the amount of seismic use?
I think it's
Right,
like
flat
Jaeger said,
reduction.
at the tunnel, on various maps or in certain key points, you're going to go move a mech somewhat near that area just so you can detect someone and not get blindsided. Areas that are difficult to scout without committing and putting yourself at risk, that's where you're going to see it used occasionally, I think.
And once we're able to select our maps, some maps it's not as useful on, like Alpine. Like, you can see a mech coming on Alpine from 1,000 meters away, literally. So once we're able to select our maps and choose our loadouts before we drop, the seismic will be used probably even less. And then certain mechs will be assigned. For instance, on Frozen City, you might get like a medium or something assigned a seismic sensor, and he's just going to sit by the cave.
That's actually another pretty good jumping off point. Thank you everybody for being so compliant with my show script. What do you guys think? How do you think that private lobbies will affect the competitive scene? We've heard a lot about how UI 2.0 is going to look, what that's going to do. We've heard a lot about community warfare recently, but none of that is going to be like a substitute or a replacement to the competitive scene. So what do you think? How will all of these leagues change based on the ability to pick maps, the ability to pick mechs? Do you think it will change? Like, obviously, it's going to change everything. But what are your thoughts on how that's going to be?
We should all say amen, and the universe is going to make sense.
Yeah, pretty much. I don't know. I think it would, at least from my perspective, change a lot of things based on what map you're going to be dropping on. You can have, as opposed to just having one deck that you've kind of made out for your this is what we're going to run for these restrictions. Period.
Do you think it'll be
you
an
can make
end
a deck
to that kind of diversity? Do you think it'll
you can make a deck for every map if you so choose, just because there are certain variations will be made to your drop deck depending on what maps are coming up, and in doing this they'll add yet another layer of complexity to the game. You say like, all right, well, right now you have to be very generic, but again, if you make like an Alpine match, well, you might be able to run like a ton of very lightly armored long range, or not lightly armored, but a ton of like long range mechs. So you get your AC2s out there, get your Gauss rifles out there, maybe you run some LRMs, and make sure you have enough fast guys to move around and get to the points or do whatever you need to do. Whereas right now it's kind of like, well, if you bank on a long range map, you get a short range map, you're screwed. And vice versa.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely going to bring a lot more specific builds to the table, rather than just having to do like a general build that's able to cater to whatever map you drop on.
I think it'll also diversify the meta, which will be nice. It won't just be like one of the reasons that PPC Gauze and PPC AC20 and stuff like that is so effective is that it can be effective at almost any range on almost any map, whereas now you're going to